recapping the things that have already been said when it comes to being a servant. Look at Chamy'shy himself. Look at beginning. Look at the word, the bar, the bear that came down from the highest Shamayim and came to light every man, woman that comes into the knowledge and receives the ore on the inside, transforming the construct of who they are. For you are the construction project. You are the start of what is called the Malkuth. When we look at ourselves, look at our minds, look at our thoughts, we go into the deepest inner parts of ourselves. We search for those things that need to be removed, the things that need to be tilled, the things that need to be destroyed, the things that need to be planted, the things that need to be pruned. And even if we try with every part of our being, there are some parts of ourselves that are hidden that requires more procedure. And this takes time. Then once these things are removed from our lives, no matter how painful they are, the healing process takes place. And through that healing process, you realize how big you are really on the inside. And how many things can be stored, can be put away, that can be hid or hidden inside of your Malkuth, inside of the kingdom, inside of who you are. For the Malkuth of Yahuwah all dwells inside of you. And inside of you is where he wants to dwell. And the love that you demonstrate from the inward man outwardly reflects who you are. And we look at the highest Shamayim, we look at the lowest earth, we look at how things were made. From the solar winds, from the cosmic winds, even as top scientists say, the solar winds and some winds on certain places blow thousands of miles an hour. And you think about hurricanes and storms that come during the seasonal cycles when they get closer and closer together, and the clashing of them. We see the storms get stronger and stronger, and we even see things get cold and things die. Then we see things revive, and then we see the seasonal changes of then when things start to fall. Then we understand that these all are a part of time. There's a time for everything in every age, whether it's through the zodiacs or the Aquarius, or all the way through the other time cycles. But then we look at these things and we ask ourselves, are we walking and living according to the one who made all kukma, all wisdom, all knowledge and understanding, who allows one to speak knowledge, and the one who allows one to be abased, one to not be able to speak, and one to be able to speak? We look at ourselves and we say, hey, are we living truly in a righteous manner on this earth? Or are we walking according to our own thoughts and our own mind? And how we put the crown on our own heads when we actually should be throwing these crowns to the ground. So when we look at servant, we look at a servant, look at someone who's humble, meek, and lowly. Even as Abigail came to Dawood to try to make right with a brother who was coming to kill another brother. We look at Dawood, how he was full of anger and rage because someone rewarded him evil for good. We see how even Yahushua himself said, if your brother have a fault, if your brother done something, you go to your brother and tell him his fault. And if he repents, forgive him. And we see these things transpiring in our lives on a day-to-day basis, every minute, every second. And as I'm speaking right now, somebody's doing someone wrong, or someone is trying to reconcile their differences, and how one would say, reconciling accounts. Because everyone has an account in this world. When we look at our accounts, we look at people we've done wrong. We've opened an account with them. And that account has a debt to pay with those people, or that person, or that husband, or that wife, or that child, or that man or woman. There is an account that has been opened. And there's a debt to be paid with that account. And you have to go to that person and you have to reconcile that account. And then you have to pay. You have to pay what you owe. And these are the things that we go through in life. Because everyone's account should be zero by now. Because if you look at how many people, things one has done wrong, you can look within yourself and how many people you've done wrong in your life. And we say, have I reconciled the account to them? Or when he has come to tell you how much debt you got with me, have I forgave that debt? We have to look within ourselves. Because every time you do somebody wrong, they come to you and they tell you, you say you're sorry and you repent, you should give them $100. And then the next time you do it, you give them another $100, whatever currency you want to use in the other world. Give them a peso, give them a denarii, give them a dinar or a franc. Then the next time it just keeps increasing over and over again. And by the time it's over, your bank account will be empty. Then you'll start accumulating more debt, then more debt, then more debt, and then more debt. And that debt increases so much to where you have no more money to pay your bills to the people you do wrong. And that should be enough to say, you know what, I need to stop and do good. So I no longer have to have debt. When you think about all the debts we have with each other, think about all the debts we have with relationships, we have debts we have in husbands, debts we have with wives, debts we have even with our own children. And you think about the irresponsibilities of each and every one of us, and you say, how we fulfilled and made right with all of our accounts that we've opened with other people. And some people, you never even asked them to open an account with you, but they opened one with you. And you have to be humble enough to know if that person comes back to you and tries to apologize for what they've done, or they come to tell you a fault, you have to be willing to forgive. You have to be willing to hear. You have to be willing to forgive. And then you have to be able to love afterwards. And these things have added up over our lives over and over and over again. So look at these things in our lives and how we need to live. But even as all of the enemies and all of the beings and everyone in the world, whether seen or unseen, whether in the cosmos, on the earth, or inside the earth, there is a day of reckoning. There is a day, because this whole world is temporary, and everything you have is temporary. Nothing goes on forever. And once you realize everything is temporary, it becomes easy to forgive, it becomes easy to hear, it becomes easy to extend kindness, to extend love, to extend compassion, mercy. It becomes easy because you know this life is temporary. life becomes a little easier. And Yahushua said, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. He said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Yahushua Mashiach was not from earth. He was from another world. He came here to redeem you from your sins, from the things you do to each other. Because we do it. And now everything's out of course. But Yahushua is coming to make things right. So this is part 2 of, where we say Shani, of servant. Looking at the definition of servant, according to, a dictionary, a definition book, or Wikipedia, or any search engine, of course we know there are many languages in the world. Go to Google, there's over 7,000 languages. Some people say over 200, scripturally or in written, some writings and some in Aramaic translations and some also English translations. You'll see that there's 70 languages. Some says 84 languages. So when we look at these constructs of languages, as far as English, some would say that English is something that's new. When you go to ancient Egyptian or Mizraim or ancient hieroglyphs, even before the Mizraim, before when Yusuf went to, it was a Mizraim before that. Maybe some 4,000 or 1,260 years, maybe before, even after Adam fell and was kicked out of the Gan. But then when you start looking at it in the sense of understanding English, we look at English as a universal language. Pretty much a person can understand it. But at the same time, the complexities of it, being as an alphabet an alphabet that's been given for, basic functionality in a system, when we look at it on a level that one needs to look to, it's just for understanding. Mastering a language, a way someone speaks is just a form, but once you start moving to another language, you'll start to see that whatever language you gravitate to and hold to, that will be your first language. So we look at servant. It says a person who performs duties for others, especially a person employed in a house or domestic duties, or a personal attendant. So when we start looking at domestic, you have to look at home, where you are, domestic duties. Right? When you look at a domestic flight, it's only in the construct of where you are and where you live, whether it's a country. When you look at an international strike or international flight or international, you look at it as leaving out of the domestic area where you are and traveling outside of where you are. It can be the same as a rocket that leaves the Earth's atmosphere, or it could be like a flight that leaves out of a country and flies to another country. You're now leaving that space and moving it out into an internal or international or internal space outside of where you are. Right? Interesting. But when we start looking at it in a sense, it's domestic duties and personal attendance. So when we start looking at things that are domestic, like in a house, when we talked about Ba'it or talked about Bereshit, when we talked about Bereshit or Barashit or however people want to say it, these are the aspects of the beginning, the Rashit or the Rashit of the beginning. We understand that the beginning is the start in the creation of a house. We look at a house that's in darkness, right? When we look at our homes and our bodies, we are in darkness. So we look at domestic duties that are things that are happening in the house. It's better to keep things in house than to bring it outside, especially if you haven't got your house in order, right? So when we start looking at domestic responsibilities, Tasks performed inside a household in order to ensure the basic needs of its members are met, such as cooking, cleaning, taking care of children or older adults, and other dependent family members. So when we look at a functioning home, we're looking at things that are actually functioning, just like a restaurant. When you go cooking, they cook meals, they take orders, they give orders, they clean the tables, they clean the floor, they clean the bathrooms. They take, when you think about people who come into the home, they take care of children, older adults, whether it's parents, grandparents, members of the family, and other dependent family members. So when you start looking at the constructs of a family, in times past, families didn't leave the home. Families stick together. Families did not leave the home. See, what we've lived in today, we have an apartment-like mindset. I have an apartment here, I can go get my own place. I can go get my own place over here, I can get my own place. When these are the constructs of, no, it's not a one house. In times past, people stayed in the home. Abraham stayed in his home for 77 years, somewhat. He stayed with his father, and then Yahuwah called him out. When we start looking at a home, everybody functioned in the home together. There was no separatism. There was nobody left the home. It was everybody. When a father had a son and many sons, those sons stayed in the home and they built up the family wealth. They brought all the wealth into the home. Right. So now you look at a lot of people who have now stolen people's children from their own home. Right. When we start looking at people's homes, we start looking at that's the building block of a functioning family. That is the building block of a functioning family. Unity. When we start looking at, oh, I have a son, I have 3 sons, 10 sons, 5 sons, 12 sons, and all my sons go off to work in the field, whether in the old times, in the field, in the cattle, and the things, and I have wealth, and they build up on top of my wealth, and we just become even more. So when we start looking at becoming a prosperous servant household, we have to look at the functionalities of that, because we're all trying to be functional. But when we start looking at how Yahuwah has made us all, or what they call God, He made us by the testimony of Yahushua Mashiach. He gave us Him. And by him coming down and being a personal attendant and a person who served, came down to give us orders on how to construct and build. We were only helpers to the building of a construct of a whole household, just like it was in the universe, in the cosmos, in the foundations of the worlds, and the 7 Shamayins, and the 7 herbs, and all the other things that the constructs of. Like even companies today, they call themselves, they say 7-Up. See, the things that you don't understand, these things are already understood. We look at ourselves as people who still are trying to focus. When you start understanding on a level that you need to understand, that's why you have family members, have big giant families with a name. And that family had a name, just like Yusuf had a name. His family had a name. When he was cast out of his son and he was thrown in the ditch, the men who he was sold to, they asked him, "Are you the son of your code?" Because everybody knew who he was. They had a big family. He was a man who was to be feared. He was a man who was mighty. Because these are the things that one doesn't have. When you look at Abraham, when he built his family with Sarah, when he built his house up to the level that it needs to get built to, you see Yitzhak or Isaac came and built on top of it. Then you see Jacob built on top of it. But then you see the good and the evil inside the home. But the home and the people always stay together. Nobody actually went. Nobody left and went to got their own place. The only people who went and got their own place, when you start looking at it in a sense, you start looking at people in times past, and you see today. That's why you have all of these different living places. And that's why it's hard. This is why it's so hard, because people don't actually look at a family network not only as a cooking, cleaning, taking care of children, adults, and dependents and family, but also it's a unit. And then what you have, then that unit builds wealth together. And by building wealth together, you build a legacy, how you say it. you build a household. And then you pass it down to one, to another, to another, to another. It's called the generational effect. When we start looking at household duties, we have to look at these things on levels, because some people think that being in a household or being married requires no cooking, cleaning, taking care of children. But these are all the basic fundamentals. These are basic things. Being a servant is basic. That is the fundamental principle of establishing a family. Everybody has to be a servant. Mother, father, son, and daughter. You must. There's no other way. And once you understand that you're a servant, you have to humble yourself like a child, and the greatest and the leader has to become the one who serves, and the one who's sitting down has to become like the youngest. You have to become like a child. Then you understand how these things work. Then you give out orders. They give out orders. Everybody's serving each other, and you have a functioning home. It's when people stop getting served in the home and no more servants is when people go outside the home. And that's when you have problems. So when we start looking at a functioning home, we look at the basic fundamentals. Aybad, do, serve, above and beyond. Because if you go above and beyond and serve each other, you will prevent a lot of things in a home. And you have a functioning home. But at the same time, wisdom is the best. Wisdom is the understanding to know that we have to be disciplined. We have to do it in love. And then once that happens, and then wisdom is actually can be implemented. Wisdom can be implemented, and it will join to your house. It doesn't join to a house of arrogance, envy, strife, complaining, criticism, pride, mumbling, grumbling, complaining. It does not have no fellowship with you. These are all internal things. So moving on to this is Kukma or Kokma, Shli, Shaluma or Shaloma, Wisdom of Solomon 6:12-25. We read this in the last, we started out with this, and we're going to start out with this again, because wisdom is important. So this is verse 12. Wisdom, Kukma or Kokma, is glorious and never fadeth away. Yea, she is easily seen of them that love her, and found of such as seek her. So we got to look at, what are we seeking? Do we have love, and what are we seeking? Are we seeking riches, money, the life of our enemies, long life? Are we seeking these things that wisdom allows one to have? Are we seeking the unseen? Are we seeking Yahuwah's breath? Are we seeking that which we heard in the beginning? These are the things that allow a person to transform, knowing that their state that they once was not conducive to the actual embodiment of the Ruach HaKodesh. But then we now put these things away and allow ourselves to be made over as a child. These are the important aspects of who we are and how we need to move in a forward direction. Because the things that we desire or desired are behind us. Everything in this life is temporary. We have to look at it as temporary. But there's some things that were here before the beginning that will be here even after this temporary life is over. So this verse 13, she preventeth them that desire her, in making herself known unto them. So when just like proving a friend in this world, if you want someone to join themselves to you, prove them first to see if you are worthy to be with her, to be with this type of information and knowledge. If you want somebody to be your companion, you just don't accept them immediately. Or a friend, you prove them. And that's the same thing wisdom does. Nobody just has it. Right? Verse 14 said, whoso seeketh her early shall have no great travail, for he shall find her sitting at his doors. A wise individual who gets up early, who seeks her early, shall find. So what are you seeking? What are you seeking? Because these are the aspects of how one develops into oneself. What are you doing at night? What are you doing? Are you doing any extra work? Any extra studying? Any extra meditation? Any extra pondering or haga? Are you doing anything extra that makes you worthy? Are you doing anything? Or are you stationary, watching someone else? Verse 15, to think therefore upon her is the perfection of wisdom. And whoso watches for her shall quickly be without care. Are you watching? Verse 16, for she goeth about seeking such as are worthy of her, showeth herself favorably unto them in the ways, and meeteth them in every thought. As we talked about last time, is kukma, is wisdom, is kokma meeting you in every thought. Has it reached you in every thought? Because if it reaches, kukma reaches in every thought, that means better decisions, better mind, a pure mind, pure thoughts, pure prayer, pure intellect, pure words, light when one speaks. And allow you to have a lot of patience. And you'll learn how to wait. Wisdom is very important. And as we go through this, we have to continue to understand how we must operate in this world. So moving on, this is Matthew or Matthew 25:1. And it says, Then the Malkuth or kingdom of Chamy'shy will be like unto 10 virgins, who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. Wise. And we know wisdom, as we talked about before, dwells with discipline and love. It does not have fellowship with envy, jealousy, pride, arrogance, a forward mouth, conceitedness. It doesn't have any fellowship with you. It said, for when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. See, foolish people don't prepare. Inward prep that we talked about before. Inward preparation. They don't prepare. They just go out into a situation without preparation, and then they start asking other people who prepared. Right? That just shows your lack of wisdom or lack of experience. It says, and he says, but the wise took, and he says, here we go. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. It says they all became drowsy and slept. See, this is a type of thing that one has to realize. You're going to get tired. You're going to get tired. But the key is, when you're tired, have you made the preparations within? So here he goes. But at midnight there was a cry, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him. So at midnight, nobody likes nobody waking somebody up in the middle of the night. Nobody likes that, like an alarm clock. Or like a drill sergeant or somebody in basic training. They wake you up in the middle of the night and make you do random things, right? Or you got morning runs when you're an athlete. You got to do things uncomfortable. He said at midnight, there was a cry. Here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him. Then all the virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. Because you got to come out to meet him. At midnight, it's dark outside. And he said that the day of Yahuwah going to be a day of darkness and no light. It's like a man did flee from a bear and a lion met him. Or a man did enter a house and a serpent bit him. It's dark. You come out to meet him. Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. Because you can't see. Because you cannot see. Because you weren't prepared and your oil ain't burning. So at midnight, when he came, when you wasn't aware, when you wasn't thinking he was coming, you couldn't see. And now you're blind. And you trying to ask the people, can I have some of your oil so I can see? Because he said the bridegroom, I can't see. But guess what? But the wise answered, since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the doors were shut. That's what he said, as we just read. The wise are sitting at the doors. You will find a wise person sitting at the doors, waiting. So are you wise? What do you desire? It says, and afterwards the other virgins came also, saying, Master, Master, open to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Right now you see the type of person Yahushua Mashiach is. Preparation, consistency, and love. Because that's what's going to get in discipline. Because these wise virgins were disciplined. They were disciplined. They had love. They had patience. These are all attributes that we all need to acquire. But here, and this right here, and it says, and afterwards the other virgins came also, saying, Master, Master, open to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you do not know neither the day nor the hour. You ain't gonna know. You're not gonna know when he coming. Are we paying attention? Are we? This is Bereshit, Genesis 3:18. It says, and they heard the sound of Yahuwah Elohim walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yahuwah Elohim among the trees of the garden. But Yahuwah Elohim called to the man and said to him, where are you? It's going to happen on a day you ain't going to think it's going to happen. So you can clearly see these wise children were not ready when he came. So what were they getting ready to do? So when you start looking at a wedding feast, when you start looking at a wedding feast or you're looking at consummation, you start looking at these things, you got to start looking at it in a form of a servant. What are you getting ready to do? Because he's coming for something. He's looking for Adam. He's looking for the man and his wife. He's in the cool of the garden the other day. He's expecting something. This is Bereshit 18:1. And Yahuwah appeared to him by the oak of Mamre. Yahuwah did. So this is the same thing when you look at the garden. He said, no man know the day nor hour. The wise kept their lamps continually burning. The wise had enough oil it was midnight when he came. It wasn't no, where are you? And he says, and Yahuwah appeared to him in the oak of Mamre, and he sat at the door of the tent in the heat of the day. So he was sitting there watching in front of his house. He was sitting there watching at the door of his tent. That's where the wise are going to be at. The wise are going to be sitting right at the door. He waiting. Who is he waiting for? No man know the day nor hour when Yahuwah is coming, or when Chamy'shy is coming. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. He saw them, and he ran from the tent door to meet and bowed himself to the earth and said, Yahuwah, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. What do you think those wise virgins are? Those wise virgins are servants. Please open unto me. Don't pass by me. Because usually when Yahuwah comes and you ain't aware and he comes unto you real quick, you hide and you be like, where are you? Because you ain't ready to be a servant. Where are you? But Yahuwah sees you. Yahuwah sees you. And it's okay. It's okay right now because he ain't here yet. There are things that haven't happened yet. But you still have time. How long? We don't know. But still, think about your life. Think about all the accounts that are open, that haven't been settled. This is Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 1 to 26. Then the Elohim said, let us make man in our salam, after our damuth, a likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the Chamy'im, over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So Yahuwah created man, or the Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Yahuwah, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Which we know male is Zakar and Nakabah. We know that these are female child, male child. Female animal, male animal. And he put them in the garden. And he put them in an authoritative position over all things on the earth, which means he put them in a great position. Right? He put them in a rulership position, something they didn't even deserve. They didn't even make. They had no hand in it, but yet they were put over it and everything in it. When you look at these aspects, you look at these animals, the things that he put them over, he made them great. So just like Yahushua said, as we read in times past, it says that the greatest among you shall be as one who serves. Or the leader as one who serves, and the greatest become as the youngest. And we can see these things, these aspects in these writings, how Adam and Qahalath were put in the garden to serve the creatures and the plants in the garden. And he gave them the food that they were supposed to eat in the garden. And that was their original state of how he planned for them to live. And we know that Yahuwah said, I am Yahuwah, I change not. The only people who have changed is us. We're the ones that have changed. To go from a God to a child, and to be built right back up from a child, that is a transformation. But one has to come from a God state to a childlike state, and humble like a child, like Yahushua did, and then return to a state of a child of light or order. So when we look at the aspect of a garden, taking care of animals, female, male children, and the things on the earth, we see them as servants in the earth. How do we know this? Let's look. The book of Yashar, chapter 76 and 17. It says, and they came home to their father, Ruel, and told him what Moses did for them. And they said, an Egyptian man has delivered us from the hands of the shepherds. He drew up water for us and watered the flock. So you can clearly see a hand, and how even Mashah himself, you can see how he is a representation of Yahusha, and even the situation. He delivered them from the hands of the shepherds. And then he drew water for us, and he watered the flock, which means he cared, he protected them, he gave the women water, and then he watered the flock. So he took care not only of the male animals and female animals, but the male child and the female child. You can see how he had care, just like the garden. Same mindset. Same mindset. Bereshit, Genesis 24 and 25. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebecca, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. She was a hard worker. Let's see what she's doing. And she went down to the spring and drew water. And I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I said to her, whose daughter are you? So you can clearly see she's a servant, just like Mashah was a servant, just like Adam and Kawur was a servant. And you can clearly see that she took care of the man, she took care of the camels, she gave them water, and she gave him water. She did not say, what are you talking about? I'm not giving you any water. She didn't get an attitude. She didn't say anything back. She didn't do any of these things. She just heard the order, fulfilled the order, and she did it in haste. Because that's what servants do. When it comes to doing things for others, do unto others they have and do unto you. When it comes to doing things for others and doing good and serving, that's what servants do. Regardless of how much knowledge one has, these attributes have to be inside of us in order for our knowledge to even be, and the wisdom and understanding to even be something that's solidified in our life. Because these are fundamental principles of following Mashiach. So, moving on to the next. So this is the truth of the Nazarenes, or the gospel of the Nazarenes, 34 and 7. And Yahusha entered into a certain village, and he saw a young cat, which had none to care for her. And she was hungry and cried to him. And he took her up and put her inside his garments, and she lay in his bosom. And when he came into the village, he set food and drink before the cat, and she ate and drank, and showed thanks to him. And he gave her to one of his disciples, who was a widow whose name was Lorenza, and she took care of her. So you see Yahusha taking care of the animals too. He loved animals. He even gave her food and took care of her. And then she gave her to a woman, and she took care of her, that cat. And some of the people said, this man cares for all creatures. Why wouldn't he not? His father put him in the garden to have authority in a minute over all the livestock, with creeping things and all things that he put him over. Why would he not? That was his command inside the garden, inside the field. And notice how he's kind to the animal, and he's giving it to another kind, gentle, loving person who, and one of his disciples, to take care of the creatures as well. And some of the people said, "This man cares for all creatures." And he said to them, "Verily, he says, verily, these are your fellow creatures of the great household of Yahuwah." Oh, remember we talked about a household, domestic duties, taking care of the needs of the members of the household, even cats and animals and creatures and lions and everything that you see. And he says, and guess what he says in verse 10? He says, and whatsoever cares for one, and whosoever cares for, it says whatsoever, but it's whosoever cares for one of the least of these and gives it food and drink in its need, the same does it to me. And whoso willingly suffers one of these to be in want and defends it not, when cruelly treated, suffers the evil as done unto me. For as you have done in this life, so shall it be done to you in the life to come. So when you start looking at the things one does in this life, one has to understand that you have to make those accounts right. Because when you start looking at these aspects of people who being a gun in the garden, you think about the children of Yahuwah. You think about humbling yourself like a child and becoming a servant, not only to human beings and humans, but also to animals, to the creatures that Yahuwah made through Kukma, wisdom. Because you're saying you're a wise servant. You say you have wisdom, as it was in the beginning. You say you're wise and you have your lamps trembling, and you're waiting for the bridegroom to receive you into the marriage. Then you should understand that it does not just include a human being. It includes the animals as well, and the trees, all of creation itself. You weren't just put here to just take care of only certain things, but everything. This is Matthew 7:7. It says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it will be opened to you." When we talked about seeking Kukma, knocking on the door, like I want to come in. Seek Kukma, seek wisdom, and you will find it. Seek the Mashiach Yahusha, and you will find. For everyone who asks receives. Remember we talked about asking, as Solomon did. And the one who seeks finds. Because once you ask, he gives it, you seek. You continually seek in order for your lamp to continually burn. It said, and to the one who knocks, it will be open. Or which of one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? It's you then who are evil. So did Yahuwah just say we good? Yahusha? He says, you then who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children. He called us all evil. Right? You know how to give good gifts to your children. Yahuwah gave Adam and Qahalath a piece of the gun. How much more will your father, your Ab, who is in Chamy'shy, give good gifts to those who ask him? Yahuwah gives good gifts. It says, so whatsoever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. So this is the law and the prophets. So you want people to do good to you, do good to them. Because these are things that man don't want to do. He said we're all evil. So therefore he's telling you, whatsoever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the Nabi'im. No, this is the law of Moses. No, this is the law and the Nabi'im. What law is he talking about? The law that was in the beginning. Bereshit. This is in the beginning. You see how Yahushua took care of the cat? He said, if you do it to them, you do it to me. This is in the beginning. So he loved the animals and the creatures. So I'm not writing no new commandment unto you, but an old one that you heard from the beginning, that you should love or haba one another with a pure heart, mind. That is the law and the Nabi'im. When you go look at all the prophets and the Nabi'im that spoke, it was always about how they treated each other. It was always about how they treated their families. It was always about how they did not take care of the needs of people and their behavior and the evil things they would do. Had nothing to do with their worship, had nothing to do with their praise and everything. It was just everything they were doing with the praise. Everything they were doing with the feast. It was everything they were doing with the words that they were speaking. It was everything they were doing with the messages and the words of Yahuwah. That's what they had a problem with. Look what they were doing with it. They were doing evil with it. Yahuwah gave the Ruach HaKodesh for people, for us to do good deeds, not evil. We are his children. Children obey their father and mother. Just like in a household. You have a household of a mother and father, you don't want them to be in your household doing evil deeds. Why would you want a household full of evil kids, evil children? But guess what it says? Enter in by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. It's an easy thing to do evil in this world. It's very easy. It's not that hard. It says, and those who enter in it are many. You have a whole bunch of people who love to do evil, to break the laws, right? To break the things that Yahuwah commanded us to do. Why? Because we have to stay busy. Children need a schedule. We need a schedule, and that schedule has to keep us busy. Because if we're not busy, what happens? We find other things to do. And being on schedule, being on the right time sequence, keeps one on their mindset in the right way. You have 7 evenings and 7 mornings per week. What are you doing in between? What are you doing during those times? You have 7 noon times during that week. You have 7 third-hour prayers, right? You have 7 ninth-hour prayer. You have so many times you can do a lot of things. You can sing 7 songs a day, like David. You can meditate under the word of the bars, meditate day and night. You have to stay busy in your mind. Because if you don't, because that's a narrow. People say, what's a narrow? That's when you're in that type of way. You have to find it for yourself. And once you find it, you don't let it go. Because it's evil. It's right there at the door. It's right there. It's easy. It says, for the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. And those who find it are few. Because everybody ain't seeking for no hard, narrow way. And we're not talking about a video, a YouTube channel, or this. No, we're talking about a life style of a narrow way. I'm very, very narrow, straight ahead. Everybody not going to seek that. Because you got to seek in order to find. What is he telling you to find? He's telling you to find the good way. The good way is to do good deeds, to do good in the earth with the Ruach HaKodesh. So this is Luke 10:25. It says, "Behold, a lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, 'Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?' He said to him, 'What is written in the law?'" What law is he talking about? "How do you read it?" Now he's asking you what is written in the law. And he said, "How do you read it?" Most people don't even seek. They don't even read. A book is better than a television. He said, "How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love Yahuwah your all with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you shall live." Right? But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Yahushua, "And who is my neighbor?" See, now, when you already know what to do, and then you question what you should do, you're only trying to justify your evil deeds that you do. And that's in anything, no matter what religion or whatever you want to be. Anytime you know what to do is right, is good, and you know you need to do it, and you don't do it, but you know, and you try to question it to justify your evil deeds, or you try to use the word to justify what you do, then what does that do? Then now you're leaving that narrow way, and you're going into the evil way. He says, Yahushua replied, "A man was going down to Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead." Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Because, when you're a priest and you got all this knowledge and you feel like you're somebody, going down and being a humble servant, that detests you. Oh no, I ain't gonna, no, that ain't in your heart to do. It's like, no, I'm too good to do that. I see a man beat up, been robbed. No, I can't do that because I'm a priest. Look at me, I'm too high up. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed on the other side. That's what you start looking at Levitical priesthood. You start looking at their high status. Their offerings of meat offerings and turtle doves and daily sacrifice and burning incense and all these things that they do on a day-to-day basis. But now when they see somebody robbed on the ground, destitute, broken, I'm too big time for that. I'm too up there for that. I'm riding on, man, y'all sinners. I'm good. I'm really, I'm the best thing. I'm the best thing in Jerusalem right now. No need for me to lower myself down and help somebody that's beat up on the side of the road. If you would understand, and most people don't even read about Sodom and Gomorrah, but these are the things that people in Sodom and Gomorrah did to the people that were on the side of the road. They would leave them to die. Wouldn't even help. So you look at a priest and a Levite, just like the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then people want to actually classify this and say, hey, look at us. Y'all stole our land. You know how people say today? Or people go online, they say all these things, but they don't even look at themselves and say, who am I? Who are we really? So then it says, but a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion on him. It looks just like Yahushua went to cat. He saw the cat in need and need want, and he picked up the cat, hold it in his bosom, and he took care of it. Same thing when you look at Mashah, and he drove away the shepherds, and where the woman gave the women water and the animals. Same thing with Rebecca, when she gave Al-Azar the water, and then she gave the camels. Just like it was in the beginning, when he put the man and the woman, Ish and Ishar, Zakar, Nakabah, the children inside of the garden, and they helped the animals, female animals, male animals. So it can be female, male animals, or male child. Female child, we are all children. They're all animals, male animals, female animals. You're going to see an animal or a man or a woman or on the side of the road and you don't help. That's not the mindset that one should have. And it says, but a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, the one who showed mercy. So how many times has one not shown mercy or compassion or humility as a servant to someone in need, to someone who needs help or destitute and oppressed? How many times? And Yahushua said to him, you go and do likewise. You know, the word for Aybad one of the words was do. He said, you go and do likewise. Because these are the things that, exceed a Levite and a priest or somebody in high esteem or high kabod or leadership or want to make themselves. These are the things that exceed them, because you can be a Levite, a priest. You can have all these accolades, plaques, theology school, degrees, knowledge, understanding. You could be doing this for 50, 20 years, 100 years, however long he allow you to live. But you start looking at these people and you say, okay, if a person is destitute and needs help, do I have in my heart, in my mind, to help that person? Because if not, then please, all of the stuff you've been doing as a priest, a Levite, or whatever you want to call yourself is in vain. Because when you get so high and you have no love, that's when you failed. It's like Shaul said, I'm a tinkling cymbal and a sounding brass. You can acquire all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't have no love, ahaba, fikri, libe, in other languages, right? You have nothing. Absolutely nothing. Bereshith, Genesis 16:1. So when we look at the things that we must acquire, we got to look at things in a different way. We got to look at stories in a different way. So this is Bereshith 16:1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant, because we know Hagar, whose name was Hagar. We know who Hagar was. Hagar was an Egyptian servant that was given to Sarah after the ordeal with Pharaoh. That was given to Sarah for her payment and the things that it was given to her because he wanted to prove that I did not touch your wife, Abraham. When Yahuwah told him to return him back, when he had a dream and he said, I withheld you from touching her. When we start looking at these aspects, we see where Hagar came from. She came from Mizraim. She came from Egypt. And it says, and Sarah said to Abram, behold, now Yahuwah has prevented me from bearing children. She, right here, you can see she knows that Yahuwah has prevented her from bearing children. She knows that he has stopped her from doing it. And guess what she says? Because, in these times and situations, we have to pay attention. It says, go, she says, go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abraham listened to the voice of Sarah. So we look at these aspects. Was Abraham supposed to listen to the voice of his Sarah in this situation? Was Sarah supposed to be doubting and trying to force her, something that Yahuwah was preventing her from having, and force it on her servant and put it on her servant to have a child by her because she was not putting her trust in Yahuwah? So look at this. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, so it's 10 years of her not having a child. 10 years of not being able to conceive a child. Not being able to conceive for 10 years. She lost faith, amunah, and patience. And Abraham took, and it says, so after Abraham lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. So you see Hagar, who was a servant to Pharaoh, and he was a servant in Mizraim, was given to Sarah as a servant. And then as a servant, she is telling her to go into her husband and have a child through him, for her. So you see this servant, this lowly servant Hagar, being put in situations and then intertwined in the sin of other people. And it says, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress and said Sarah, and Sarah said to Abram, may the wrong be done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. So now you see, this whole situation was created by Sarah. She lost patience. Yahuwah was preventing her. She took it into her own hands, and without consulting with Abram, without consulting with the person who's withholding the child from her, and then gives the child to her husband. Gives the woman to her husband, Hagar. And you can clearly see that now she regrets it. Because now the woman is looking at her like, you ain't got no child. Look at me, I ain't got no child. Now, the very situation that Sarah thought was going to be for her good was actually not for her good. But you look at Hagar, her servant, you can see her in the situation now, intertwined in the sin of some other people. And she's just a servant, just doing what everybody told her to do. Listening to Pharaoh, listening to Sarah, listening to Sarah again, listening to Abraham. She's just intertwined in everybody's sin. And she's just a servant, a lowly servant. Guess what it says? May Yahuwah be judge between me and you. But Abraham said to Sarai, see, Abraham don't want nothing to do with it. He don't want anything to do with what's going on. It was her decision and this was her thing. But he listened to her voice. But now he's seeing this is a bad situation. And guess what he does? Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. So now he just literally just threw her away. Hagar, the lowly servant. Then Sarah dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. So now you got people just treating this servant bad. She gives her over to husband. Husband just throws her back to Sarah. Sarah does harshly with her, and she leaves and she flees. Little old lowly servant Hagar, just doing what she's told. So here we go. So we see, even in this, that Sarah knew that she was held from a child. She lost faith. She lost the moon and stopped trusting and gave her servant to her husband. You can judge within yourself. This is Proverbs 3 and 5. Chayparach. It says, trust in Yahuwah with all your heart. That's what Sarah didn't do. And lean not to your own understanding. That's what Sarah didn't do. She leaned to her own understanding. And so did Abram. This is Psalms 37 and 5. Commit your way to Yahuwah all and trust in him, and he will act. Did Sarah trust in him? After 10 years, she lost her Munah. Yahuwah was preventing her from having a child, but she did not knowing that down the future she was going to have one. But he was testing her to see how much patience, and how long can she wait. So you got to think about our lives. How many times in our lives we moved on our own accord and lost patience and stopped trusting on Yahuwah and made mistakes? Think about it. Because in this situation, you can clearly see that Hagar, the lowly servant, is just doing what she's told to do. And everybody's tossing her around and treating her like nothing. And you see Hagar get a little, like it says here, contempt, as if I'm looking at you in a judgmental manner. But she not even knowing what was getting ready to take place. So the lowly servant just doing what she's told, just a servant. That's all she is. Hagar is a servant. So now she's ran and she's gone and she's fled. So let's look what happened next. Let's move on. So this is Bereshit 16:8. It says, and the Malach of Yahuwah found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. This is after she ran. And he said, Hagar, servant. A servant. So why would a Malach, an angel of Yahuwah, be talking to somebody who's a servant, a slave? Somebody who just got thrown over as a mistress to somebody else's husband to have a child by her, and who just got dealt harshly and got thrown out, who was told by Pharaoh to go with Sarah, been a servant her whole life, been told what to do, all in the midst of people's sin. Why would he go to her? Let's see. He says, servant. He says, Hagar, servant of Sarah. So he called her a servant. So where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. The Malach of Yahuwah, the angel of Yahuwah, said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. So now, just like it is with Yusuf when Yahusha found a sheep wandering. He found his sheep lost. He told him, yeah, your brother is that way. The Malach angel of Yahuwah gave her instructions to go back to her mistress, to the person who was treating her harshly. Because sometimes the things that you'll be getting commanded to do, it will be for your suffering. It'll be for your suffering. He said, go back to your mistress. Go back. Your brother's that way. Not only it was leading to his use of suffering to save much people alive, to bring people out of the situation. He told her to go back to your mistress and submit to her. It's like Yahushua when he was in the temple in Luke or Oriah chapter 2, and he was in the temple. And his mother and father were seeking for him because he's mother and father. And he said, don't you know I have to be in my father's household? In my father's house? His household? Because he's a servant in the house. So this person's a servant. He's like, okay, being that you're running away from being a servant, continue to be a servant, regardless of how people treat you, regardless of how they throw you in the mud, regardless of how they toss you around, regardless of how they do these things to you. Why? Because these are the things make the determination of a true servant. Let's look at this woman, this female servant. It says, the Malach of Yahuwah said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. The Malach, the angel of Yahuwah, said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. And the Malach of Yahuwah said to her, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, or Yishmael, because Yahuwah has listened to your affliction. That's what his name means. Yahuwah has heard. Yahuwah has listened. He has listened to what? The servant's affliction. Because she's getting ready to bear a son. And Yahuwah has heard her affliction. He listened to your affliction. So it means if he was listening to her afflictions, he was listening to the conversations of Sarah. He was listening to her voice, listening to how she was speaking and being harshly. She was listening to how Abraham just tossed her back to Sarah. She was listening to Pharaoh, how he just gave it to Sarah. He was listening to all the things that Sarah was doing without trusting him. He was listening to all. He said, I heard all your affliction. I listened to your affliction. Yahuwah has listened. But woe unto you, right? When you start looking at these things, you look at a servant, right? So you look at Hagar, a lowly servant, who she was just doing what she told to do. And now she's pregnant and entangled in Sarah's lack of trust and mistakes. But Malach told her to go back to the house and submit to her. So you look at Sarah's lack of faith or Amunah, Hagar suffering for just doing what she's told, just being a servant. That's all she's doing. She's been a slave her whole life. So you can't imagine being a slave your whole life? A slave to sin? A slave? Can you imagine being a slave your whole life? She even listened to Pharaoh, man. Told him to go with Sarah. Remember, Pharaoh, Yahuwah appeared in a dream. He was afflicting his whole household. She just keeps, you look at Sarah, and you look at Hagar, and you look at how she just keeps bearing someone else's mistakes. So this is Bereshit 21:8. It says, and the child grew and weaned, and Abraham had a great feast on the day that Yitzhak was weaned. So now you see that the child that was promised to Sarah, even after she lost patience, Yahuwah still turned her mistakes and still gave her the very thing that Abraham wanted and needed. It was an heir. And you can clearly see how Sarah had lost the Amunah, lost patience. And even when you go back and when the Malach came and told her she was going to have a child, she laughed within herself. But here we go. So it says, but Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So now Sarah, because Hagar was told to go back to the home with Sarah and submit to her, which she did. She submitted a long time to her. And then Yitzhak is now born, Isaac. And now the son is laughing, right? That's what she's mad about. So she said to Abram, cast out this slave woman and her son. So now Sarah makes a judgment call to cast out this mistake that I made. Because I now have that child Yahuwah has now given me a child that was promised to me. I have the promised child. So now you can cast out this slave woman and her son. So now she's moving swiftly in faith and Amunah and everything. She's thinking, in a sense. So she said to Abram, cast out this slave woman and her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Yitzhak. And the thing was very displeasing to Abram on the account of his son. Right? Notice it's only on the account of his son that he's upset about, trouble. He wasn't thinking about Hagar, he was only thinking about the son. It said, but all said to Abram, do not be displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Right? So you can see that Abram considers the son and the slave woman as one. You can see them as one. But when you see him considering the son of the woman, he considers the woman as well, as one. He says, whatsoever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Yitzhak shall your offspring be named. Now, in this situation, Sarah didn't know that the Malach of Yahuwah was actually had spoke to Hagar. So Sarah had no idea that she was being spoken to by Yahuwah, and that Yahuwah already told Hagar what she was going to do to her son, and how he was going to make him great. She had no idea. The only thing she's thinking about is getting rid of her, casting her out of her house. He says, and I will, and guess what he says? For through Yitzhak shall your offspring be named, and I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and skin and water and gave it to Hagar and put it on her shoulder along with the child and sent her away. So he put her out of the house and didn't give her anything. That's not even things we're supposed to be doing. That's not even things we're supposed to be doing. He said, and put on her shoulder along with the child and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Oh, she's wandering, kind of like Yusuf. Oh, kind of like Yusuf. She was sent out, right? The son, right, was sent out by the father, Abraham, and he put all these things on his shoulder on the slave woman, on the servant, and sent her out of his house. And now she's in the wilderness wandering. The servant woman, the lowly servant Hagar, who was just doing what she's told to do, who was moved around and cast around from Pharaoh to Sarah to Abraham, back to Sarah, and now she's cast out with the slave son that was born through Abraham. Isn't that something? And now she's wandering. Let's see. And when the water of the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him in a good way off, about a distance of a bow shot. And she said, let me not look on the death of the child. So the water gone. She got away. She got about a bow shot away, and she said to herself, "Let me not look on the death of the child." Kind of like when Yahusha, when he was with the disciples and they were praying, and he went about a stone cast from them. And then right here, and it says, and she sat opposite him. She lifted up her voice and wept. So she started crying. And Yahuwah heard the voice of the boy. And she sat opposite of him, and she lifted up her voice and wept. And Yahuwah heard the voice of the boy. Remember, the Malach of Yahuwah already told Hagar what was going to happen. That's why he told her to go back. He already told her that she was pregnant and that her son was going to be great. He already told her that, even before she got cast out. You see how fast we can forget the words that were spoken to us before, and we lose trust in tough situations instead of just trusting the word and knowing that Yahuwah cannot lie, knowing that you will survive, knowing that you will make it. Let's see. And the angel of Yahuwah called to Hagar from Chamy'shy and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for all has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, and I will make him into a great nation." Then all Yahuwah opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. He did what? Then all Yahuwah opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skins with water and gave the boy a drink. And Yahuwah was with the boy, and he grew up, and he lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Mizraim. So you can clearly see how this woman who's with this malak, whom the child was getting ready to die, she went away a bow shot, who bore all the sins of all that household that you just saw. But then there's one key factor that people not seeing. It's one key factor that people are not seeing. It says, and he says, and then all Yahuwah opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin, and with water gave the boy to drink, which means that she was blind. Yukinan 9:24. So the second day they came to a man who had been blind, and said to him, "Give kabod to Yahuwah. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I can see. I can see the well of water." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciple?" And they reviled him, saying, You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that Yahuwah has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he come from. You mean like they didn't know that the Malak had spoken to Hagar and told her to go back to the house and submit. They didn't know it was for her suffering. They didn't know it was for her freedom. They didn't know it was for her eyes to be open. Let's see. The man answered, "Why? This man," he says, "but after this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Why? This is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that Yahuwah does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of all and does his will, all listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from all Yahuwah, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and will you teach us?" And they cast him out. Isn't that what they did, Hagar? They cast her out. And amazingly, when Isaac was born, what was the son doing? He was laughing. In some writings, it says mocking. Amazing, when Yahushua was on the cross, they mocked him. On the stake, they mocked him. And it says Yahusha heard that they had cast him out. So when which one have a man who has many sheep and he go and find the one that's lost and wandering, and he not bring it and put it on his shoulders. Amazingly, Hagar was wandering, and Yahuwah comes out there and he finds her wandering. He said, I found you wandering. I found you that you were lost and you couldn't see, Hagar, my servant. So what am I going to do? The Malach Yahuwah opened her eyes and she saw the well of water. She gave her son something to drink. Amazingly, how a mistake that she bore from other people, and they put all the reproach upon her, and all the sin, and all the mistakes, and all the lack of trust, and all the things that they did not do in the household, and they put it all on her, and then they cast her out like some trash can trash. Right? But all these things, and you see all these things, but all these things are Yahuwah's will. And why did he do that? Why did he allow these things to happen? Yahusha heard that they were cast out. Yahusha saw her cast out. And having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe in the Son of all? And he answered, who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? Which means he's blind right now. Yahusha said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. He said, Master, I believe, and he worshipped him. Yahusha said, for judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see. Isn't that what Hagar, she could not see? And he opened her eyes, and she saw the well. Do you believe in the Son of all, Hagar? And guess what? He says, and those who see may become blind. Abraham and Sarah, when you look at Sarah, she didn't even know what was going on. She didn't know that the Malach of Yahuwah spoke to her servant and told her to go back and suffer with her and be treated harshly by her. He didn't even know that. She didn't even know when she said cast out that bondwoman and her son. She didn't even know. She didn't even know that she blind. She didn't even know it. She didn't know she was blind. And some of the Pharisees, and it says right here, some of the Pharisees near him heard these things, and they said to him, are we blind also? Because somebody's always listening. Got something smart to say. Are we blind also? Yahushua said to them, if you were blind, you would have no guilt. Yeah, if you were like Hagar, a nice lowly servant, Sarah, you would have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains. But who did the sin fall on? All the sin, all the wrong, bad decisions, all the lack of trust of Pharaoh, of Sarah, of Abraham not listening to Yahuwah's voice, going and doing things that he should not have done. All of that sin fell on Hagar. Amazingly, Yahushua said in the book of Romans, he said, the reproaches of them that reproached thee, it fell on me. For Mashiach bore our sins, and he absorbed them all. He bore the reproach. Hagar bore the reproach of Abraham's house in that whole situation. And all that fornication and sin that was committed inside of that home, and that's how that child was born, was all put on Hagar, the lowly servant who was just doing what she was told to do. And then Yahuwah, and then you see how all that sin was born upon her and thrown upon her because of what? Other people's mistakes. Sounds familiar? The lowly servant. We are all such as servants. Even as Abigail bore the sin of Nabal, you see Hagar bearing the sin of that whole house, and even Pharaoh himself, and all the things that they just tossing her around. But now she's out in the wilderness, and Yahusha done opened her eyes. Oh, the Malach just opened her eyes, and now she can see. Yahusha said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see," Hagar, "and those who see may become blind," Sarah. Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we blind also?" Yahusha said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, 'Man, I see,' well, I know I can see, your guilt remains." So you look at the household of Ishmael, Yahuwah has heard today. You look at the descendants of those today. Yahuwah is not a man that he should lie. Neither change his mind. He said he's going to make him great. He did that. That's what he said he's going to do. So this is Yochanan 8:39. It says, and they answer him, Abram. He says, and they answer him, Abram is our father. Yeah, of course. The 12 tribes came out from Yitzhak, and then they came out in Rebekah, and then they came out from Jacob, and you see the descendants come out of Mizraim and going through the wilderness, going through all the tests and trials, all the Nabi'im and the prophets being sent to them, and they get to this point where Yahushua Mashiach is on the scene, some 4,233 years later. Yeah, Abraham was our father. We know who we come out from. And he said, and they answered, Abraham is our Abba, our father. Yahushua said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works that Abraham did. Yeah, if you knew the works that Abraham did, you would be doing the works that Abraham did. But you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from Yahuwah. This is not what Abraham did. Abraham ain't do that. Now, Abraham heard the word of Yahushua Mashiach. When Yahuwah spoke to him, told him to cast out all that your wife had said, do it. He said, when I spoke to him, he just did it. He didn't try to kill me. He didn't try to do nothing to me. He didn't even do that to Hagar and Ishmael. But the people today, they always want to talk about Ishmael and Hagar and other nations, but Abraham didn't do that. He gave her things that they needed, and he left, and they almost ran out. But the Malach Yahuwah already told Abraham they are protected. So you think Yahuwah's gonna lie? No, he protected her, and he opened her eyes, and she saw the son of Yahuwah. Oh boy, she did. She saw the son of Yahuwah. He says, guess what he says? You are doing the works of your father did. They said to him, we were not born in sexual immorality. See, they already knew when Abraham listened to his wife and had that child and was given to her, they knew that that child was born through fornication and sexual morality. They knew the difference between Yitzhak or Isaac and Ishmael or Ishmael. They already knew. They knew there was sexual morality. And guess what it says? We have one father, even all. We weren't born in no sexual morality. We have one father, even all Yahuwah, right? We know that. Do they really do? He said, for judgment will come in the world, that they that see may become blind. And those who are blind, that they may see. If they were blind, they would be without guilt right here. But being that they believe that they see, they sin remain. They're not even understanding the whole process. They don't see that Hagar bore the sin of Abraham, of Sarah, her lack of trust, and just been thrown around and being treated like nothing. And just been thrown around. All she's doing is a lowly servant. And they put all the sin on that servant. The same thing they did to Yahushua. All the sin fell on him. The iniquity of the father followed upon the children. Falling upon the servants. Humble yourself like a child and you will never enter the Malkuth. And guess what it says? Galatians 4:21. It says, "Tell me, what do you desire?" It says, "You who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael, one by a slave woman and one by a free woman." You know, the slave woman is Hagar, the free woman was Sarah, right? Let's see. But the son of the slave was born according to the flesh, right? Fleshly desires, fleshly wants, not trusting Yahuwah, making bad decisions, giving your Hagar to Abram, giving it to him when you losing trust and not trusting Yahuwah, and he would have acted on your account because you ain't had a child in 10 years, give him to Abram. And that was according to the flesh. It says, while the son of the free woman was born through promise, because I was promised that the Malach or the angels gave to Abram. This time next year, you're going to have a son. But this woman, this lowly servant Hagar, who was born according to the flesh, they say no regard, right? Let's see. Now this may be interpreted, it says allegorically, these women are two covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. That's what it says. Now Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. She corresponds to the present Jerusalem. So you can look at Jerusalem, present Jerusalem, right? Hagar, right? Fornication. It says she is in slavery with her children. But Jerusalem above is free, and she is the mother. She is our mother. For it is written, "Rejoice, O barren, who does not bear. Break forth and cry aloud, you who are not in labor." Right? That's what Sarah did, or Hagar did, when she was cast out. She wept, and the servant and the Malach of Yahuwah came to her, and Yahuwah heard her weeping. But she heard the son, though. He said he heard the son. It said, for the children of the desolate, one will be more than those who are, than of those who has a husband. So you can see when someone has a fornication relationship you'll see more children of fornication than you will see of children of the promise. It says, now you brothers, like Isaac, are children of the promise. But just as, because we are the children of the promise, but then when you start looking at being a child of the promise, you can't overlook Hagar, the servant who bore the sins of the mistake before Isaac was even born. Because somebody had to pay the price for that sin that was in there. And Hagar was the one they placed it on, and they cast her out with her son, because the son was laughing. But just as at that time he was born according to the flesh, persecuted him who was born according to the Ruach. So it is now. So you see, that's why you see Ishmael was laughing, mocking. Because they were born according to the flesh, right? Fleshly wants for fornication, but then you see he mocking the one that was born right. It says, so also it is now. But what does the scripture say? Cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not inherit with the son of the free woman. So you can see when Sarah told her to cast out Hagar and Ishmael, Yahuwah has heard, he cast her out. Right? Because she said, you ain't going to be heir with my son. You over here laughing, mocking my child. And she cast her out. And he told Abraham to do everything she said. Because she actually thought she saw. She really did. Let's see what happened. So brothers, we are not the children of the slave, but of the free woman, right? That's what we are. We are the slave. We are not the children of the slave, but of the free woman. Let me read it again. We are not the children of the slave, but of the free woman. When did Hagar become free? Because she was a slave her whole life to Pharaoh. She was a slave to Sarah. She was a slave to Abraham. She was just tossed to and fro, moved around. She was told to go back to the house and suffer, to the harsh woman and being mistreated in the house. She was told. The only reason she was told to go back to the house so she can bear the sin of the house. All of that. And she was a slave woman that whole time. But what made her free? What got her free from being a slave? Because she was a slave her whole life. What got her free from being a slave? The sun freed her and opened her eyes. Because who was mocking? The sun. And being that the sun was mocking, it caused Sarah to cast her out. Not even knowing, by Sarah seeing the sun, it set Hagar free. But even though the sun was doing something evil, it still turned out to be something good for Hagar, the lowly servant. And as soon as Yitzhak was born, once the son was born, once the promise came, Hagar was set free. Notice how the two sons, the evil son and the good son, all had a hand. Either way, the son set her free. The evil that was being done and the promise being born. Both sons had a hand in getting her free. The son set her free from being a slave. So this is Hebrews 13:12. So Yahushua also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Therefore, let us go outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. Isn't that what Hagar had to do? She was thrown out of the camp of Abraham. She was thrown out of the house of Sarah and bore the reproach. And she endured it. And she bared what they did. For as it is written, cast out that bondwoman and her son. And Yahuwah heard that he was cast out. He said, do you believe on Yahuwah? Or you believe on your son of Yahuwah? He said, where is he? He said, it is me that's speaking to you. Doesn't the man have a sheep and he has one sheep and he lost? Won't he leave the 99 and go find the one which is lost? And you see Hagar out there lost. He said, I found you wandering. Because the father sent the son out, but it was just like he sent the woman out. I found you wandering. Here, and opened her eyes, and she saw the well, and she gave water to her son. And they were revived. Because they were all both getting ready to die. But he made them alive. And it says, therefore, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. So what are you seeking? It says, through him, then let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to Yahuwah. That is the fruit of the lips, and acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to Yahuwah. It says Philippians 2:3, do nothing of selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not to his own interest, but also to the interests of others. Isn't that what Sarah was doing? She was only looking at her after her own interests. Because she wasn't even thinking about trusting Yahuwah. She wasn't thinking about putting all her trust in him and not losing faith after 10 years. And she just handed her child over. Or hand a female servant over. She wasn't thinking about that. She wasn't thinking about Hagar, the lowly servant. She wasn't thinking about what it was going to cause and the pain it was going to cause her. She didn't even think about that. She just did it. And he says, have this mind among yourselves, which is in your Yahusha, he said, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Mashiach Yahusha, who though he was in the form of Elohim or all, did not count equally with all, or Elohim, a thing to be grasped. Right? So he came in the form of Yahuwah and did not count equally and did not count equally with Yahuwah. Right? He was in the form of his father, but he did not count equality with him, a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking on the form of a servant, like Hagar. You see Hagar? Being born in the likeness of men, being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death. Wasn't Hagar at the point of death? Even a death on the cross. Isn't that something? This is Romans 12:16. It says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Do not lean to your own understanding. Sarah. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path, not you, not your own decisions. Not your own thing. Colossians 3:14. Put on then as Yahuwah's chosen ones, Chudash and beloved and compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as Yahuwah has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. So when you have sin in the home, things ain't in perfect harmony. You have no love in the home, things are not in perfect harmony. You have to remove some things in order for that to happen. And the thing about Hagar, in order for the home to be in perfect harmony again, because it wasn't, because of the mistakes that Sarah did by giving her to Abraham and having a child, and she getting jealous and envy and throwing her out, and then he telling her to come back, and now the child is mocking. In order for things to get in perfect harmony, things had to be removed. And who was that? Who had to be removed? Sarah. She had to be cast out of the camp. No, Hagar had to be cast out of the camp in order for these things to be removed. But even casting her out and putting the sin on her, the reproaches of them that reproached thee, it fell on Hagar, on me, on the lowly servant, Yahushua Mashiach. He said, search the scriptures. In them you think you have eternal life. It's talking about me. And you have to understand how the child, once the child was born, the promised child, each son, even though the children came out, one from fornication, one from the promise, you can see how he turned a mistake into someone being set free. Not only Hagar was set free from her sin or her slavery, but also Abram and Sarah were set free from their sin. So whom the Son set free, they are free indeed, right? And it says, put it on then as Yahuwah's chosen ones, Chudash and beloved and compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as Yahuwah has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, ahaba, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Yeshayahu 57:15. For thus says the one who is high and lifted up, who inhabits eternity, whose name is Kadosh, or I dwell in the high and Kadosh place, and also with him who is of a contrite and lowly spirit. Hagar. Who was the Moloch and Yahuwah dealing with during that time? Sarah? No, it would deal with in that situation. It was only dealing with Hagar, and then at the end, Yahuwah spoke to Abram and told him to do everything your wife told you to do. But in that situation, all that stuff was being thrown on Hagar, and Yahuwah was talking to her, communicating with her more than he was communicating with him. The lowly servant, Hagar. Can you see Hagar? Can you see Mashiach? Can you see him in her? Can you see how he found her, wandering? Can you see how she was that lost sheep and he opened her eyes? Can you see that she was blind but now she can see, like the blind man? And they cast her out. You gonna all teach us, you were all together born into sin. The son of Hagar. But when the son was born, he set everything free. And he freed everybody and brought everything in perfect harmony in the home. This is Yeshayahu 57:15. It says, finish this up. For thus says the one who is high and lifted up, who inhabits eternity, whose name is Kadosh. I dwell in the high and Kadosh place, and also with him who is of a contrite and lowly ruach, to revive the ruach of the lowly, and to revive the heart of the contrite. When Sarah, you gotta think of how she's feeling. She got cast out. She got all the sin put on her. Now she got no more food. She's getting ready to die. And she put the child on the other side. Now she's over about a bow shot. And everything's getting ready to happen to her. And she's just a lowly servant. She was a lowly servant. And she was getting ready to die. And the high one, Yahuwah, the one who sits in the highest Chamy'shy, whose name is Kadosh, who dwells in the high place, in the highest Chamy'shy, heard her cry. And he sent a malach, and he opened her eyes. He sent the word and opened her eyes, and revived her lowly spirit, and revived her contrite heart. Because look how she was treated. But yet he revived her through the well of water that he opened her eyes to see, to drink from. So this is the book of Yasher, 21 and 24. And Abraham went to the wilderness and reached to the tent of Ishmael about noon. Oh, I thought it was cast out that bondwoman and her son and never go see your child. Never see him again. So most people believe that Abraham never went to go see his child again. Let's see. And he asked after Ishmael, and he found the wife of Ishmael sitting in a tent with her children. So Ishmael, because Hagar got him an Egyptian woman, right? And gave her to her son. He found her sitting in a tent with her children. And Ishmael, her husband, and his mother Hagar, right, were not with them. So Hagar and Ishmael wasn't there. The original people whom were set free from Abraham's house, right, through that big ordeal. So they all free. When the son sets free, you free indeed. She's no longer a slave anymore, or a servant to sin. She's still a servant, but she's not a servant to sin anymore. And Abraham asked the wife of Ishmael, saying, where has Ishmael gone? And she said, he has gone to the field to hunt. And Abraham was still mounted upon his camel, for he would not get off to the ground, as he had sworn to his wife Sarah that he would not get off from the camel. So you can see Sarah still holds that ill will and that in her heart. She still has it in her mind. Even so long, how many years it's been? It's been years, and she still has the hatred in her mind. She still has that in her thoughts. You see how we can hold things? You ask yourself, do you still have things in your mind after years of things being happen and events? Not even knowing, she don't even know that the Son has set her free from her slave to sin, and he put it all on Hagar. She don't even know that she's been set free because Yahusha hasn't been risen yet. But yeah, she's still holding things against somebody that she should have let go a long time ago. And people still do that today. It said, and Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, my daughter, give me a little water that I may drink, for I am fatigued from the journey. So now he's asking, just like Mashah gave the women, water for the camel, and for the, Rebecca gave water to the camel and to Eleazar, and Mashah gave water to the women and to the animals. So Abraham's on the animal asking for water. He said, I'm fatigued from the journey. I'm tired. Like Yahusha at the woman at the well. And he was tired. He sat on the well and he said, give me a drink. Right? Everybody's asking for some water from the well. Right? Let's see what happens. And Ishmael's wife answered and said to Abraham, we have neither water nor bread. And she continued sitting in the tent and did not notice Abraham. Neither did she ask him who he was. She's like, we have no bread. She said, we neither have water nor bread. Right? So here we go. And do you see how this is transpiring? So now you got to look at Abraham, who is a servant, who has a house full of servants. And all he knows is about servants. And then you have a woman who tells him, we neither have bread nor water. And she continues sitting in the tent. She's just sitting there and did nothing to even try to get him anything. He's about to die. He's tired and fatigued, not even knowing that the only reason she's even still there is because the Malach of Yahuwah gave his mother and gave her husband and her mother-in-law some water. And she can't even go get any water. And she's just sitting there in the tent. She's not a servant. You see that? And it says, and did not notice Abraham. Neither did she ask him who he was. She didn't even know. She didn't even ask. But she was beating her children in the tent. She was so busy beating her children in the tent, and she was cursing them. And she also cursed her husband Ishmael and reproached him. All in the tent, in the house. Isn't that what some women do today? And Abraham heard the words of Ishmael's wife to her children, and he was very angry and displeased. And Abraham called to the woman to come out to him from the tent. And the woman came and stood opposite to Abraham, and Abraham was still mounted upon the camel. He didn't get off the camel. He said, promised Sarah that he wouldn't get off the camel. And Abraham said to Ishmael's wife, when thy husband Ishmael returneth home, say these words to him. A very old man from the land of the Philistines came hither to seek thee. And thus was his appearance and figure. I did not ask him who he was. And seeing that thou wast not here, he spoke unto me and said, when Ishmael thy husband returneth, tell him thus did this man say, when thou comest home, put away this nail of the tent which thou hast placed here, and place another nail in its stead. And Abraham finished his instructions to the woman, and he turned and went off on the camel homeward. So you can see Abraham gave his son a parable, a story. He gave him a story about a nail, and he talked about putting another nail in the stead. You look at this woman wasn't a servant. You can see that she was cursing her children, cursing and beating and even cursing the husband. These are not the attributes of a righteous home, of a home that's full of harmony and love and compassion and humility and full of servants and kind ones. This is a home of chaos. This is a home of evil. When you start looking at these aspects in your home, in your house, when you have these aspects in your home, in your house, just understand Mashiach doesn't want nothing to do with you. Mashiach doesn't even want you in his family. He don't even want you in his house. He wants you gone. He wants you replaced, because these are the attributes that produce behaviors that are conducive, that are not conducive to the Malkuth and the kingdom to come. And it's not going to be conducive to a righteous seed. But you can clearly see that she wasn't a servant. And she was just sitting there. She didn't even acknowledge the person that was there. But you can clearly see that these are the things that people do today. And we do to each other. And we do it consistently. And it says, verse 32, and Abraham finished his instructions to the woman. So the father gave instructions to the son through a woman. And he turned and went off of the camel homeward. But if you can go read the rest of the story. But you can clearly see, when you do these things, just know the father is not happy or joyful. And it says, Matthew 21:40. And it says, here another parable. There was a master of the house who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it and dug a wine press in it and built a tower and leased it to tenants and went into another country. When the season of the fruit drew near, because we're almost here, we're almost to the season of the fruit, he sent his servants to the tenants to get his fruit. And the tenants took his servants and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again, he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did the same to them. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, they will respect my son. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and have his inheritance. And they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Let us go outside the camp. They killed him. They cast him out and they killed him. Let us go outside the camp and bear the reproach that he did. The reproach of them, they reproached thee, they fell on me. What do you think they did to Hagar? The lowly servant. He was just, or Yahusha was just being a lowly servant, bearing the sin of others. And he sent his son, and they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants, right? They said to him, he will put those wretches to a miserable death. He said, and let out the vineyard, right, to the other tenants who give him the fruits in their seasons. Yahushua said to them, have you never read the scriptures? The stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Adon's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of all will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruits. And the one who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush him. So you look at that woman that was in the house with the children, cursing the children, and everything that she was doing, and didn't even acknowledge Abraham, didn't even see, and even ask who he was, didn't even know who he was. And he came on a day that she didn't even know. On a day that she was unaware. She didn't even know. She didn't even know. Beware about entertaining strangers. Because some have entertained Yahuwah unawares. Don't even know what was actually taking place. And what happened. He said, give these instructions to my son. Take this tent peg, and replace it with another tent peg. He said, therefore I tell you, the kingdom of all will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruits. She wasn't producing the fruits for the kingdom of all. So he was taking it away from her and giving it to another nail. When you start looking at these things, you start looking at these aspects, these parables and these things. Don't look at them as just parables. Because Yahushua is a lot smarter. This is the truth of the gospel of the Nazarenes of the Nazar 68 and 6. Kind of stems out from the same but different sayings as far as things how it's written. So Yahushua said to them, have you not read in the scriptures the stone which the builders rejected? The same has become the capstone of the pyramid. So when we look at modern day 22 AD, we look at the capstone of the pyramid, it's all geared towards secret societies, organizations, thousands of years of secrecy and what they call secrecy. But when you start looking at the secrets of the cosmos and the secrets of Yahushua and Mashiach and the things that one doesn't know, the enlightenment, look at the capstone of the pyramid. Look at the top of the pyramid. Look at the top of you look at a food chain pyramid. You look at what's at the top. The finishing of the pyramid. When you look at Yahushua HaMashiach, you look at him as the top of the building. When we look at the building of Bereshit, when we look at the building, the cosmos, we look at the building of anything. He is the focal point. When we look at him and we look at the knowledge and we understand, even though this is written in the capstone of the pyramid, we have to look at it in a different way. Because before the earth even was, before anything was, Yahushua was there. Before a capstone or a pyramid or anything that you see. So when we look at these aspects, we look at him being exalted. So they said, this is Yahuwah's doing and is a marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say to you that the kingdom shall be taken from you and given to a nation bringing forth its fruit. So when we look at, he's saying that the kingdom going to be taken, the Malkut going to be taken from you and given to another nation. He's talking about the current people that he's currently with are not producing the fruits that he needs. Kindness, joy, kindness, ahab, peace, kindness, ahab, joy, peace, patience, meekness, temperance, amunah, faith. The fruits of the Ruach, compassionate hearts, mercy, gentleness, forgiveness. You're not producing the fruits. Kindness, brotherly affection, sisterly affection. The fruits are not being produced. Yahushua treats this as a harvest, planting it as a business. When one is not producing the fruits that he needs to bring forth righteousness, bring forth humility, bring forth lowliness, bring forth the very things that he needs to see, he's going to give it to someone else. This is how he operates. Doesn't operate any other way. And the things that we understand, these fruits have to be manifest in action. Slow to anger, quick to hear. We can read these things, but can one do that? Not arrogant or proud, not a striker, right? Not smacking people, not doing things. Can we actually put these into practice? Being kind to all creatures and all things. These are all fruits of the things to come. Whether good or evil, love your enemies. Return no one evil for evil. Or when somebody does good to you, don't return them evil. These are all fruits. And the fruits have to bear. Hospitality, hospitable. These things are the things that's going to bring forth the righteousness in the earth. Loving your neighbor as you love yourself. Whether they have money or they don't. Whether they have many clothes or they don't. Loving your neighbor as you love yourself. Not gossiping, not slandering, not holding malice, jealousy, envy, strife, complaining, criticism, pride. All these are things that will not be there. These are all the fruits. So he said, I'm going to take it away from you currently. Yasharal, Yahudim, and give it to another nation who is producing the fruit. Because all Yasharal is not Yasharal. And he said, whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but whosoever it shall fall, it will grind them to powder. So when we start falling on the stone, you'll be broken and contrite heart. But if you allow that stone to fall on you, then you're going to be ground to powder, like Lot's wife, Lut's wife. So it's important to understand these concepts. And we look at the son, when Abraham went to go see Yishmael, what did he say? He said he was on his camel, and the woman in the tent didn't even acknowledge him, and she was cursing his son. So you look at that aspect. If you don't acknowledge the son, you don't acknowledge the father. So why would she acknowledge the father if she's cursing and reproaching the husband or the son of Abraham? So when you look at that woman that was in that tent, you can look at each and every one of us. When we don't do what we're supposed to, we don't acknowledge the father, we don't acknowledge the son. And we don't acknowledge the son, we don't acknowledge the father. Then we start biting and devouring our own children, our own families, our own husbands, our own wives, our own offspring. And these are all the things that are cancer in our houses, whether internally or externally. Because what's on the inside manifests on the outside. And we all grew up certain different ways, but these are the aspects that do not produce servants, humble, meek, lowly servants in a home. And we have a lot of these things transpiring, whether good or evil, whether one believes in Yahuwah, Mashiach Yahusha, or Yahweh or Yahushua, or Yeshua, or any other religion, Jesus Christ, God. People say different words, Muslim religion, anything, Allah, or all these other gods, right, that we proclaim to believe in. When you start looking at the fundamental principles of a home, that's the building block of everything. You destroy that concept, you destroy everything. And we look at these things, we look at the constructs of what Yahuwah has created. The things that Yahuwah created are not to be worshipped. We are to worship the one who made everything, not the things that he created. The things that he created are for us to stand in awe of him. It is not for us to worship them. We worship the all, Yahuwah, Yah. We worship the one who sits in the highest, Chamy'shy. That's who we worship. It's not for us to worship anything here, even ourselves. Put ourselves aside, put our things aside, and focus on the one. But we look at these aspects and we say, are we really walking? Are we really walking as servants? Right. So we're moving on to the very thing that we talked about last time. So here we go to the end. Oriel Luke 2:22. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. And he said to them, the kings and Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you be as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who is the greater, the one who reclines at the table, or one who serves? Lowly Hagar. Is it not the one who reclines at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. So Hagar was a servant serving them. But you see how they treated the servant? It says the one who sits down and reclines at the table, the one who considers himself great. You start thinking about these things, these aspects of sitting down at the table and being served by a servant, a lowly servant, a female lowly servant. And then You're the greatest, and you got to become like the youngest. You got to become humble. And it says, Sirach 3:17. We went through this before, but my son, go on with your business with meekness. So shalt thou be beloved of him that is approved. The greater thou art, the more humble thyself, and thou shalt find favor before Yahuwah. Many are in high places and of renown, but the mysteries are revealed unto the meek. It says, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Mashiach, Yahusha, who though he was in the form of Yahuwah, did not count it equality with Yahuwah a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking on the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of man. Being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. This is all you can see in Hagar. This is just showing you the aspects of how Yahushua Mashiach comes in many forms throughout writings. Therefore, Yahuwah has highly exalted him, and they bestowed upon him a name that's above every name. Didn't he make Yishmael name great? So that at the name of Yahusha, every knee should bow, in Shamayim and on earth and under the earth, in all the worlds, multiple worlds. And every tongue should confess that Yahushua Mashiach is master to the glory, kabod of Yahuwah the Father. And you should bow. Cast out that bondwoman and her son, exactly. So he can people can be set free. So that person can bear the reproach and set people free from sin and slavery of sin. And bring things to harmony. Colossians 3:12. Put on then as Yahuwah's chosen ones, Chudash and beloved and compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Adon, the Master, has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. So you look at Sarah holding these things against Hagar, Yishmael. She just hates every single aspect of Hagar and her son. And then Abraham promised her, I won't get off the camel. That's the same thing people do today. Instead of reconciling the account, right, that she put on him, but even though she didn't, she still had the promised child, and the promised child still bore the sin. And then you look at Hagar bearing the iniquity, this lowly servant, just being a servant. But none of them knew what was taking place. This is Luke Oriah 6:46. Why do you call me master, master, and do not the things I tell you? Why not be just a servant? Amazingly, Hagar did it. Hagar was a servant. And by her being a servant, eventually she was set free by the Son. She said, we are all servants. We take orders and fulfill them. Only in the Master. Fornication is still wrong. Sexual morality is wrong. One should not do these things. But in the case of Hagar and the things that she was obeying, you look at that situation, you can see Yahushua, Mashiach, all in it, and people being set free from sin. You can see people getting set free from slavery to sin in the house that she was living in. It says in Oriah Luke 17:7, will any of you who has a servant plowing or keeping sheep say to him, when he has come in from the field, come at once and recline at the table, will he not rather say to him, prepare me supper and dress properly and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterward you will eat and drink? Does he thank the servant because he did what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, we are unworthy servants. We have only done what was our duty. Hagar. When the Malak told her to go back to the house of her mistress and submit, she was only doing what was her duty, because she'd been doing it her whole life. But eventually, she was no longer a slave to sin, and she was set free by the Son. This is 2 Timothy 2:24. And the master's servants must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting his opponents with gentleness. Yahuwah may perhaps grant them repentance, leading them to the knowledge of the truth, that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will. Servants. So this is Yochanan 8:34. Yahushua answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. Isn't that what Hagar was in the middle of? Sarah, Abraham, fornication, bearing sin, hatred, envy, strife, laughter, mocking, hatred, casting her out. They were just practicing sin. They were slaves to sin. But guess what? Hagar was a slave in that house, and it was full of sin. All types of behaviors and things. And guess what happened? It said, but it says the slave does not remain in the house forever. She didn't remain in Abraham's house forever. It says the son remains in the house forever. Isn't that why he said, cast out that bondwoman and her son? Yeah, he said, cast out that bondwoman and her son. She shall not be heir. That's true. Not with my son. Because the son, he said he going to remain in this house forever. This is my house. This is the house, right? The son remains in the house forever. But guess what? For if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed, Hagar. He freed her. The son freed her. So cast out that bondwoman and her son. She don't remain in the house forever, but guess what? That son set her free from that sin she was entangled in. All that house slavery to sin. So who is one to say that one can't be set free from the things that they were doing in the house of sin in their environment that's producing all of the sin? Who is one to say that Yahuwah can't set you free, put you at a point of death, and then fulfill his promise to you and open your eyes and allow you to see and to understand and see him, because you were blind and now you see? Who is one to say that you cannot see when he has opened your eyes? But being that people think they see Ishmael, they see Hagar, they see cast out that bondwoman and her son, but they don't ever see that Yahushua set them free by the Son. So just like Yahushua said in Matthew 7:1, judge not lest you be judged. For whatever judgment you meet, it's going to be measured right back to you. First, cast the log idol out your own eye, and you can see clearly. Then once you can get all that out of your mind and out of your thoughts and out of your eyes and out of your life, then you finally see clearly. You only see that what you thought was a log in your brother or sister's eye, it was only a little speck compared to what you got. So yeah, trust in Yahuwah. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. It will be healing to your flesh, your shore. It will be healing to you.